Wonderful to think about the so many achievements that you've had since becoming the first woman, the first black American to become the AG in New York State back in 2018. And 2020, Letitia, extraordinary, taken on the NRA, where you had lawsuits that led to stunning declarations of personal benefit and enrichment. You've taken on concerns about the USPS funding, the census, voter suppression. You brought no less than 35 lawsuits against the Trump administration this year. What is now front of mind for you? What are you most passionate on?
So at this point in time, first, let me thank you for this honor. It's an honor and a privilege to be on this program and to be included amongst the 50. But at this point in time, we are preparing a list to be submitted to the Biden-Harris administration in an attempt to address and to reverse all of the policies of the Trump administration that unfortunately have adversely affected New Yorkers. Issues such as the SALT deduction, the $10,000 cap on property tax deductions. That was a limit that was placed by the Trump administration on New York State. Issues such as the Affordable Care Act. It's really critically important that individuals with pre-existing conditions and those who have minors that have access to health care. We know that before the Affordable Care Act, the number one reason why individuals across this country were filing bankruptcy was because of medical expenses. It's important that, again, we defend the United States Postal Service. The Trump administration sought to dismantle and affect the operations of the Postal Service prior to the election. It's important that we stand up for immigrants right now who are standing in the shadow of government. Yeah. That we recognize that we are a nation of immigrants, as is evidenced by a book that was authored by the late John F. Kennedy. And it's important that individuals understand the contributions of immigrants to our country. That and other policies, litigation, and regulation we have to reverse, including standing up on behalf of our environment.
Letitia, I mean, this is a pretty lofty list, and a couple of things on that list, including pertaining to the SALT Act as well as the Affordable Care Act. I'm wondering, is this a role for a state attorney general to take, or is this something that rather should be left to Congress? What gives you, I guess, the authority and I guess the ability to actually make these changes to try to reverse those decisions?
Because there are three branches of government. And unfortunately, over the last 4 years, and since I've been Attorney General the last 2 years, two arms of government have not been working, the executive and the legislative branch. And so it's been left up to the judiciary branch. And so the attorney generals across this nation, but primarily Democratic attorney generals, have stood up and defended the Constitution against this federal retrenchment. And it's important that we understand that the Constitution and the rule of law is what controls and not the law of men. And so it was important that attorney generals stand up, defend our democracy, defend policies that unfortunately have disparate impacts on New Yorkers. And that's what I did each and every time. And it was important to defend our institutions, and our institutions withstood the challenges of this administration. And in fact, in the majority of the cases, over 80% of our cases, we have been victorious, again, because the Constitution and the rule of law is what governs our government.
You were also leading a group of state attorneys general in the fight against big tech. What is the progress of that? And would you partner up with the FTC, or do you think it's better to have multiple cases going on at once?
As you know, there are several investigations against big tech at this moment. Facebook and Google has been reported, and there are still ongoing investigations. And until those investigations are concluded, I will not prejudge our investigation. But a number of attorney generals, it's bipartisan, are involved in both investigations against Google and against Facebook as well.
You mentioned they're bipartisan, but we've sort of seen, particularly with the Google case, for example, that it sort of fell along partisan lines. Do you worry about that lack of bipartisan nature? Do you think that will improve, particularly when you look to these sorts of cases, when you're looking at Facebook, Google, and some of the big technology giants?
Our investigations have not concluded. And as I indicated, the vast majority, overwhelming number of attorney generals, again, on a bipartisan level, are a part of this investigation. And so we are approaching this investigation in a manner which is based on the facts and based on the evidence. Similar to that, we have done in a bipartisan approach have joined hands in regards to the opioid investigation, in regards to price gouging, in regards to consumer fraud. We work well together, attorney generals all across
Yeah.
this nation, and it's an example that the Congress should follow.
Are you prepared to go this alone, New York State alone, if you don't get the cooperation of some of the other state attorneys general? And with regards to the cases out there, particularly with Alphabet, Google, do you anticipate at all maybe potentially folding your case in with the federal case?
I am confident that it will be a bipartisan matter as we move forward. Again, our investigation is bipartisan, and in the event that we do file, we look forward to, again, looking at the possibility of consolidating with FTC.
You're also bringing a few cases, as Caroline nicely mentioned in the introduction, against the Trump organization. Of those, which one are you most focused on?
As you know, has been publicly reported, our investigation was as a result of the testimony of Michael Cohen during congressional hearings, and we are investigating financial impropriety of the Trump organization, which primarily focuses on the fact that they inflated funds, they inflated their assets for the purposes of getting loans and insurance from private entities, and they deflated their assets for the purposes of taking advantage of our tax code. And that investigation is ongoing.
Attorney General, we bring you to the Bloomberg 50 because, of course, the achievements, to recognize the achievements of 2020. And 2020 has been such an extraordinary year. It's been not only a health crisis, it's then been an economic crisis, but it's also been a social crisis. And that was really evident throughout the electoral process. And I think this is something that you focused on a lot was, you know, voter suppression, potentially concerns about that, and particularly about USPS, the United Post Service as well. How are you looking at that going forward from here? Now the election is over, do you think we've got a safer electoral process here in the United States? And do you think you've got a strong infrastructure when you have, for example, the USPS?
So it's the United States Postal Service, that litigation is still ongoing. In fact, the Postal Service decided to appeal the decision by the lower courts in regards to basically disrupting the operations at the Postal Service. And again, it's going to affect senior citizens who rely upon their pensions, individuals who rely upon their prescriptions, and those who rely upon their paychecks and assistance from government at this point in time. I do not know why the Trump administration decided to appeal the United States Postal Service when so many people rely upon it, and we're post the election. Two, I think it's important that individuals understand that the Office of Attorney General is really here to uphold the law and to serve the interest of New Yorkers, and politics ends at the door. And so going forward, I'm hoping that our democracy and our voting process, which is a basic element of our democracy, is protected and respected. That efforts are, and that we do not engage, and that any government does not engage in any efforts to suppress the right to vote. People have spoken. It's important that voices be heard, and that we do not anything to disrupt, delay, or deny a basic part of our democracy, and that is the right to vote. People's voices need to be heard.